evening. Welcome to the Township of Howell Planning Board's meeting Thursday, September 19th, 2024. Eileen, opening statement, please.
I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 5th, 2024, a copy of said notice was emailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Star Ledger. Second, on January 5th, 2024, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 5th, 2024, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Also, for anyone who was here earlier, a bit of housekeeping, the restrooms in the corner here are now unlocked. Sorry about the inconvenience. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Cristiano's been excused. Mr. Greenfield's been excused. Mr. Leggio?
Here.
Mr. Mercer?
Here.
Mr. Tannenhouse has been excused. Mr. Withers, I have not heard from. Mr. Rebel?
Here.
Councilwoman Fisher?
Here.
Ms. Pike?
Here.
Mr. Carbonic?
Here.
And Chairman Husser.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll do a moment of silence for the fallen men and women, both here and abroad.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Eileen, do we have any minutes?
I have no minutes this evening.
Any correspondence?
Yes, I do. There is an application scheduled for this evening for SMC Properties, case number SP 1123. I have an email from John Jackson, the attorney, asking that this application be carried to the next available hearing date, which actually he picked November 7th, with no further notice, and granted an extension of time through November 7th for the board.
Okay.
Okay, so let me just make the announcement on that. SMC, you said, Eileen?
SMC, yes.
Okay, so application SP-1123 SMC Properties LLC will not be heard tonight. It will be carried to the board's November 7th, 2024 meeting. It is a live meeting beginning 7 o'clock here in Town Hall. There will not be any further notice to property owners.
Thank you. I also have a letter from attorney Jared Pape. He is the attorney for case number SD 3015, which is the last case on our agenda tonight for Abraham Weinman. He has also asked that this application be adjourned with no requirement to renotice to the Howell Township Planning Board meeting on October 10th, and asked that the application be scheduled at the top of the agenda. And that application is still good on time.
Got it.
Okay, so the application SD-3015, Abraham Weinman, be carried to the board's October 10th, 2024 meeting. It is a live meeting beginning at 7 o'clock here in the main meeting room in Town Hall. There'll be no further notice to property owners.
Thank you. And the last item is just, I sent another email today to the various planning board members who have not done their stormwater training yet, and I ask that you please do that as soon as possible so the town can be in compliance, and you need to send me an email when you complete it so we can keep that for our records. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any resolutions?
No resolution.
All right. Submission waivers. Case number SP 1128, Links Waste and Recycling Center Solutions, Inc.
Got mine right now.
It's preliminary and final major site plan with ancillary variance and design waiver relief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. My name is Gregory Vella of the law firm Collins Vella Casello on behalf of the applicant Links Waste and Recycling Center Solutions, Inc. We're here for some waiver relief. I did speak to your engineer, and I'll pass it on to her.
Great.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the submission waivers are specifically outlined in our July 12, 2024 review letter in item 3. As Mr. Vella indicated, I did have the opportunity to speak with him. I recommend that the board require checklist item 16, a traffic report, as well as checklist item 60, all overland and underground drainage conveyances within 2,000 feet downstream. As it relates to the balance of the items, I take no exception to the granting of those waivers for the purposes of deeming complete. However, recommend on a subsequent submission, some of the more administrative items like email or state planning designation or reference for the North Arrow be included. Having said that, though, I would like to see items 16 and 60 at this time.
Counsel, are you good with that?
Absolutely. I already have the engineers working on the ones that she says we need to do.
Great. Questions from the board? No. I will entertain a motion. Sure.
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Pike? Mr. Mercer for the second.
Mr. Leggio?
Yes.
Mr. Mercer?
Yes.
Mr. Rebel?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Karbonic?
Yes.
Chairman Husser?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the
Thank
evening.
you. You too.
See you in a couple months, hopefully.
All right. All right. So the application, the only application this evening, case number SP 1105 AAVR HW Property LLC. This is preliminary and final major site plan approval with design waiver relief. I do want to make an announcement prior, Counselor. We understand that this is a sensitive topic. Everybody will get to speak when we do open it to public. You know, we will give everybody time. So, you know, just be patient and you will have your chance to speak.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, just before we get started, just by way of housekeeping, it's my understanding that all board members, with the exception of the councilwoman, are eligible to vote tonight?
Yes, Mr. Rebel and Mr. Karbonic and Ms. Pike have all certified, so they're all eligible.
Okay. So if we could just have all council enter their appearances?
Members of the board, professionals, good evening. Rob Simon, attorney with Herald Law, here on behalf of the applicant AAV RHW Property LLC, Block 41, Lot 17, Victory Road.
Good evening.
Good evening. Zoe Ferguson of Lieberman, Blecker, and Sinkovich on behalf of the objectors. And I have a list of my clients board would like, but that has been previously submitted to the board
And it remains the same as previously submitted?
and remains the same. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Simon, you heard my announcement about the number of eligible voters tonight. So it's less than a full board. Are you satisfied with that, prepared to move forward?
I am, yes.
Okay.
So, good evening, good to be back here before this board. As the board is aware, because we haven't been here in a while, this is an application seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct an approximately 200,000 square foot warehouse office building with 25 loading dock spaces, 68 trailer parking spaces, and 72 passenger vehicle parking spaces. The property is 19.91 acres in size and located within the Special Economic Development Zone District along Victory Road. So as the board may recall, the last time we were before the board, there was an issue raised about the proposed septic system and septic design for this site, and at that time, it was agreed that the applicant would get that information, come back to the board and present it. So that's what we would like to do at this point, unless the board has any questions. We have a witness, Vincent Kelly from Colliers, and if there's no other questions, I'd like to have Mr. Kelly be sworn at this time.
Sure.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name for the record.
Vincent Kelly, Kelly. Business address 101 Crawford's Corner, Homedale, New Jersey.
Hey, Mr. Kelly, were you previously qualified?
He was not. He hasn't been
Okay.
here before.
So, counsel, if you could just qualify Mr.
Sure.
Kelly?
So, Mr. Kelly, can you please provide the board with your credentials, occupation, affiliation, areas of expertise, and license and experience in the field of engineering?
Yes. So I am a licensed civil engineer in the state of New Jersey. I graduated from NJIT 2011 with a BS in civil engineering. Been licensed almost 5 years now. Been practiced up and down the state, providing testimony. I've actually appeared in front of this board September of last year. And my license is current and in good standing.
We'll accept
Good.
your
Before
credentials.
before we accept, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Ms. Ferguson, do you have any idea you'd like?
No, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Credentials are good.
Great.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, you've had an opportunity to review the application materials in connection with this matter,
Yes.
and you've also reviewed the CME letter dated May 7, 2024, regarding septic design,
Yes.
and you prepared the septic design for this application?
I have, yes.
Can you just walk the board through the design as to why the particular design, why it works or doesn't work, and that everything has been verified?
Sure.
And let's, before we even start, make sure that we have the correct plan that we're working off of.
So is this, I know we received some exhibits late this afternoon. Is that what you're referring to now, one of the exhibits that was sent this afternoon?
So can you just confirm
is.
the date of 9/18 in the title block? That should be the current plan.
Okay. Was this marked, Eileen?
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
marked as a 68.
Okay.
All right, is this a new exhibit that wasn't previously submitted before yesterday?
Late this afternoon.
Yeah, just a few hours ago, actually.
Okay, so we haven't seen this?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to know how different it is from what we have seen since we
Well,
had an opportunity.
let's listen
Why
to
don't you
the
let Mr.
testimony,
Kelly
and
get through
we'll
the
get into
testimony,
that.
and he can maybe compare it to prior versions. So, Mr. Kelly, and I'm going to let you make your presentation.
Thank you.
But before we do so, there was a septic design plan that was submitted to the board, A67, last revised April 18th, 2024, and now we're up to A68, which is, I believe, an updated plan last revised September 18th of 2024, correct?
Correct.
So in the process of your testimony, if you could maybe just describe the differences between the plans.
Sure, that's no problem at all. So before I start, just want to let you know, within the township itself, the way it works is within the township subdivision and site plan application process, the Howell Township Utilities Department gets a copy of the application.
Can I just interrupt? Ms. Ferguson has somebody who's sitting next to her. I don't know what the purpose of this is, if this is a
What does it matter what
witness.
the purpose of it is? She can have anybody sit next to her that she
Well,
wants.
is it her client?
What does it matter?
Yeah. Go ahead. Please proceed, Mr. Kelly.
Sure. So the Howell Township Utility Department gets a copy of the application. They determine what sanitary sewer serviceability is associated with the site itself. This site was determined that it's only viable via septic system. And then after that application happens, you make an application to the township itself to receive a permit to actually construct a septic system, which we have also received from the township. The condition of that permit to construct it is that you need to have the septic system also reviewed and approved through the governing body, which is Monmouth County Health Department. We have also received the permit that the that's sitting on the screen has been in conformance with NJAC 7:9, and we have received their permit as well. So everything that, on the plan wise and everything like that, there's nothing really stopping from going out and constructing the septic application.
Did you receive the permit or did you receive the approval?
Permit. I watched them sign it this morning.
Is the permit the approval?
Yes.
So let me ask you why you got the permit approved today, when the last time we discussed this was November 2023?
Excellent question.
Thanks. I mean, honestly, it's been almost a year since you've been here. And the last time you were here, the issue was the septic, correct, Mr. Simon?
That's the reason why we adjourned.
Correct.
And now we're back presenting that testimony.
We're back almost a year later with something that got approved today. You asked them to, you're going to ask them to act on this.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think let's just allow the applicant
Yep.
to present, and then we'll go through cross-examination, and we'll assess where we are.
Sure.
Yeah, and Mr. Kelly, the municipal or approval, that was via letter dated March 6th of 2024?
Yes.
Okay, and that I believe has been marked as B47 for the record. So that was back in March. So again, in response also to Ms. Beam's comment, if you can also, through the course of your testimony, just identify the differences, let's say, from March 6, 2024, through the last septic's design submission to the board prior to today, and also what the updates consist of.
Sure. So the previous septic system that was done back in March or April was always supposed to be a pressure dosing system, and it was day one. It is still a pressure dosing system now. The only real difference between the previous iteration and now is just some minor technical calculations that the board, the Monmouth County Health Department wanted to clarify and say. The only other thing they wanted to see as well within the septic system itself is the replacement of the zone of disposal, which is yep. So if you look at the bottom section of the septic system below the zone of treatment, we went out there and tested the soil that's on site today. It is feasible with the soil on site. It's classified as a K3, which has a very good permeability rate through the soil itself. So it would pass the septic system if we didn't replace it with the K4 soil. The Monmouth County Health Department just asked that we do that, and instead of pushing back on them, we really didn't have an issue with it because it would actually prolong the life of the septic system itself. That's really the only real difference between the previous plan and the one that was signed today.
So if you would just go through for the benefit of the board, why you decided on the particular design.
Sure. So the pressure dosing system realistically was the only viable option for this site due to how flat the site actually is. If anybody that's lived in this area for, I'm sure, which a lot of you have, like myself, live in this area, it's very flat. You don't have very steep slopes. So it's not really feasible to go from the building, gravity fed, because it goes at a certain % slope, into a septic area that way. The only way to actually really do that would be to fill the site and raise everything. So you'd have to raise the parking lot, you'd have to raise the building. Realistically, besides financials, it doesn't really make sense to the surrounding properties, everything like that, to just add extra feet for really no reason.
And just go through for the board why you believe that this design, as you proposed and was approved, why is it appropriate specifically for this project?
Basically just went over that. So because of the natural slope of the land, it's really the only option for it. The specific location where the septic system is obviously on the east side of the property, behind the stormwater basin. It's going to be surrounded by trees, everything like that. never really going to see it from the general public and even from the operations itself. Going to have a small little cleared area for maintenance and everything like that, but where it's located, you're really never going to ever see this. And again, it is below surface, it's not above grade or anything like that. At the end of the day, it's going to look just like grass with some PVC caps sticking out of the ground.
So what's powering the pressure dosing system? Is it a electric pump or?
Correct, yes.
So is there a backup or something at the power to go out and say cause a situation where the backup and?
Yes, there is an alarm that goes off when either power is tripped or if there's ever an issue with one of like the floats that are within the system or, to the pump itself. So basically, a maintenance crew will come out, service it, make sure it's good to go. But again, if the entire area is out of power, I mean,
That's what I was thinking of, more in like a storm situation. If you're out of
Right.
power for a day or two, you could have a backup in a, I guess, what would you
No,
call it, an
so-
ecological situation back
so
there?
so
where to
upstream of that.
Flood the ground surface.
It's actually a great question. So upstream of that, there's two tanks. One, there's a septic tank that takes all the solids, so that has a large area itself. And then directly downstream of that is where the pump is housed, and it's a dosing tank and everything like that. It has area for the water to sit there. It actually has a reserve area as well. It's basically the same size of what a daily usage would do. So let's say the power goes out, it has extra area to hold that, and it would never basically overflow within the tank and, spill out into the ground.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing that I want to note is that the septic design is very specific to the maximum number of employees that would be allowed, as well as delivery people. So I don't recall if they've ever put a number on that, but your design assumes 112 employees and 63 delivery over a 24-hour period.
Correct.
So is that a stipulation that's being placed on the approval then?
I'll go check with the client on that. We'll get back to you on that.
What's the minimum distance from the seasonal high water to the bottom of the treatment zone? Per the county standards for the permit?
You go down. So the seasonal high is actually identified. I think it's, memory serves, it's 7205?
It says 71.
71. So that's the seasonal high right there. So the distance to the ground elevation's about 7-8 feet.
So it's within a foot?
That's just the zone of disposal. That's the secondary treatment that further brings it into the ground. The zone of treatment has 4 feet section up top. So basically, you got topsoil, and then you also have the foot of stone, and then about 5 feet of treatment.
Right, I was just
But to
saying
the
from the bottom of
question,
the treatment
right,
zone,
the
it's
bottom,
within the
yeah,
foot.
the
Yes.
bottom of treatment is at 71.05, and the seasonal high is at 70.31.
It's not treated like a basin where you need a minimum 2-foot clearance from the bottom of the invert to the
No.
water level?
The
It
zone
could
of
be within a foot
disposal
like that?
is allowed to have the seasonal high within it.
So this is different than the original design, correct? The original septic design on this property. This is a different design. That's fair to say?
I don't know. When I designed it, it was a pressure dosing system.
So this is the only septic design we're seeing?
I believe so.
This
I mean,
is the one so what I can represent is the septic design was submitted to my office, and I generated a review letter in May, and at that time, it was a pressure dosing and a mounted system. There have been 2 update revisions to that plan, but I believe, as was testified to, they were, technical in nature, it didn't change the system.
Okay, so the system itself is,
The system itself, this was the design submitted to the board back in the spring.
got it, thank you.
And originally, it was 200-plus feet from the existing building? Or maybe that was the original plan, maybe this is different than that? So where is this located? Is this closer to Victory Road?
Yeah, Victory Road is to the north, but where the septic system is placed, it has the appropriate distance to the property line. And if you see the property line, it kind of cuts away from a Victory Road too. So by nature, it's set farther back.
Yeah, and I remember at that time, that was the area where the ground was gonna be raised 28 inches,
28 inches of topsoil, Mr.
right?
Mercer.
Right?
That's what we talked about
Right.
last time. Yes,
So
sir.
I wanted to make sure, because it's been a while.
Yeah. I got some notes here from when we did
Yeah,
that.
so that obviously changes the, maybe that meets the groundwater requirement, I don't know. But, I don't know. Okay.
I have nothing
And
further for.
the disposal area, also, you mentioned they tested the soil was a K3 permeability, and the plans are saying K4, but you got approval for K3?
We got it approved for K4.
I thought you said it was a K3, it was tested as a K3.
It was tested at K3, and there's nothing wrong with having K3 soil in the zone of disposal. K4 just helps break it down a little bit better. So the Monmouth County Health Department just asked us to do it since we were since we were doing a mounted system and introducing K4 sand already. They just said, just bring it all the way home for your entire system. Again, no real issue. It actually benefits the longevity of the system itself. Adds years to the system.
It's increasing the time of disposal because K3 is a lower permeability than K4, correct?
Correct.
Are there isolation valves in the event that there's an issue with the system? As in, I'm not sure of the design, but if they need to stop anything from, any leakage or anything like that.
Yeah, if they ever need to
leaching.
maintain it, they'll have a pump truck on site, and then, similar to like what they would do for maintenance, they come out and they service it with that.
Right.
They would just have a pump and do that while they make the repairs, but yeah, basically, I would assume they would stop operations, so stop flushing the toilet and stop getting more stuff introduced to it.
By the way, Laura, in response to your question about the number of employees and deliveries, the applicant.
Mr. Simon, just into the mic.
If you pull that over closer to you, it'll pick you up. I have to make sure you're on.
Sorry, is
That's
that
okay.
better?
That's
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. In response to the question about the maximum number of employees and delivery personnel, that was stated in Laura's letter of or memo of May 7, 2024, the applicant will stipulate as to the maximum number of
Okay,
employees.
can you just give me those numbers
Sure, I'm
again?
going to give them to you, Ron. The maximum number of employees over a 24-hour period would be 112, and the maximum number of delivery personnel over a 24-hour period would be 63.
Delivery personnel, or, okay.
And that's also is delineated in the CME memo dated May 7, 2024.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I just, a question. The plan that was signed today and you received the approval for today, when was that plan submitted?
I walked the plan in this morning, but I sent the plan to them yesterday before I walked it in to make sure they were good with everything.
Okay.
Can I,
Nick, you want to ask?
no, my question is, all right, and Ron, I apologize if this is out of line, but if you guys were going to originally come here in July, what was the plan in July if you just walked it in the door yesterday?
The septic approval by the county
Right.
is not required to be obtained prior to this board making a determination on this development application. There's a section in municipal land use law,
I understand.
Section 22B, that permits a board, as typical, to condition any approval on the issuance of any outside approvals that, in essence, would preempt, whether it's county, whether it's state, that have jurisdiction over the development application. So whether we're coming in July, and it's a good question, whether we're coming in July, August, or just so happens today, the reality is that the board has the information pursuant to the Howell ordinance to make a determination on the application even without an outside approval, whether it's county approval, state approval. And of course, if, for example, the board were inclined to hear or we were hearing the matter, let's say in August, and the board was inclined to approve the application, absolutely a condition of approval would have to be obtaining all outside approvals that are relevant or applicable to the development application pursuant to Section 22B in municipal land use law, including county health approval.
Okay, let me rephrase my
Mr. Chair,
question.
just-
Sure.
Section 22D does say that. However, I think they're looking at it a little bit in isolation. The purpose of this board's review of the septic plan and this later review of particularly the location and the design, is more oriented towards the improvements that are within the board's jurisdiction, understanding whether this plan would impact where the buildings are going to go, how circulation can flow, things that are directly under this board's jurisdiction. So the board is not seeking to supplant the county's authority or to take away, an outside agency approval. It's seeking to understand what that design's impact is on the things that are within its jurisdiction. And I would cite the Field case and the Morris County case that talk about there are instances where the lack of outside agency approvals impact those very things. In one of those cases, there was a permit from the DEP regarding a dam construction, and the courts found that the lack of having that approval and that information deprived the board of enough information in that case to make a determination regarding stormwater management. So this board isn't looking at it to approve a septic design. It's looking at it to understand the impact of that design and that placement upon issues that are squarely within its jurisdiction.
Mr. Kelly, you want to respond to the chair's inquiry?
Yes, so I have your answer. So back in January, when this application kept getting carried, basically. Back in January, we actually got an email response from the Monmouth County Health Department that said if you replace the soil that I described, everything else is addressed, and once you do that, your permit will be issued. So our plan was really to come back and says, we do this, we will get our permit, basically. We have since done that, and here we are getting our permit. So that's
Okay.
easy answer.
And the plans were submitted in, I think, around January to the board, and then I think updated in April, and I think that the CME letter was in May.
Any questions?
Okay. I have nothing further for this witness.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would recommend opening it to Ms. Ferguson if she has any questions.
Yeah, Ms. Ferguson, please.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I've never used this shape of microphone, so I hope
You're
that I
good.
do it
Hear
right.
you.
Okay. Mr. Kelly, my name is Zoe Ferguson. I represent the objectors. So the modifications to this plan were made yesterday or today? I just want to clarify.
Yesterday.
Yesterday, okay. And it was brought into the county today, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. The gallons per day you're expecting here, is it still 1,995?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Kelly, just speak into the microphone.
Sorry, correct.
And how did you come to that determination that that was the number of gallons per day that you needed for this application?
So it's a combination of employees and the deliveries that are expected for the site. The deliveries expected for the site is at 63, and then 112 gets you to 1995. The septic rules themselves are if you are under 2,000 gallons per day, you are governed by the county health department and do not need to go to the state and seek a different application. So we were staying underneath the 2,000 gallons per day, and that's how we determined it.
I appreciate that. I was going to follow up on that about that DEP standard, but I wanted to first ask you, there's no tenant for this site, is there?
I would have to ask the applicant. I'm not
Currently,
aware
no.
of that. Attorney said currently no.
Mr. Simon said currently no? Okay. So how do you know how many employees and how many delivery people are going to be there per day?
Well, that will have to be determined by the end user. I would have to ask the applicant to speak on if there's any negotiations or anything like that, but that's really up for them to decide.
Well, you just
We just stipulated to
stipulated
it.
that
Correct.
no matter who the tenant is going to be, it's now limited to those numbers that you just
Correct,
gave.
correct. And that will be part of their markability.
So, just to clarify, because I think that I heard you say this, and I wanted to make sure that it's correct. When you were calculating the gallons per day used for the site, and therefore the site size and the equipment that you need, you were aiming to get under 2,000 gallons per day, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Was that with regard to considering who the tenant would be, or was it specifically only just to make sure it's under 2,000 gallons per day, whatever the number is?
Objection, we already said that there's no particular tenant identified for the site.
Mr. Simon, again, just to the...
Okay.
You get underneath the trip limitation of 2,000 gallons. This is also common practice for spec buildings such as this nature. You want to get local approval and move forward with, construction and everything like that.
Right, no, thank you, I appreciate that. And I understand it's on spec. So, does that mean, if you could just clarify for me, does that mean that on any given day, there will never be more than 1,995 gallons per day of effluent at the site, or is it possible it could ever be over that?
Based on my calculations, no, it should never be over that.
Should never be over that. Is there any possibility it would ever be over that or over 2,000 gallons per day?
No?
Okay, so that 5-gallon difference that's never going to happen?
Not based on my calculations, no.
The calculations of the employees and the delivery people, right?
Mr. Kelly, you really need to get closer to that microphone.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Can you say it again?
Oh, I was just saying that your calculations that you're referencing are the employees and the delivery people. Can I ask you, did you do any calculation of any secondary uses in NJAC 7:9A? Any sink stations, anything like that?
No, it was based on employees and the delivery coming to the site.
Are there going to be any sinks at the site?
Again, this is a spec building. Well, the sinks are included in, the bathroom usage for the employees or the delivery. So I would
Bathrooms.
imagine there would be some sinks to wash your hands, yes,
So that's included in the calculations you've already done?
correct.
Okay. And so I have to ask you, does that mean that no, and maybe you're not the right person to answer this question, but because you're the septic person, I want to make sure that I'm asking you if I need to. Does that mean that any tenant who might come here on spec, who knows who it could be, they're not going to be able to install any sink systems, who knows what's going to be in here, anything else, any showers, that could never happen here?
Yeah, correct. So it's based on employee usage of the bathroom and the deliveries.
Okay. Do you have the distance in feet between the septic disposal field, and the inside bottom of the basin? So I know that there's
Yes.
I think an illustration here.
54 feet. 54 feet.
Distance between the field and the bottom of the basin.
Not the bottom of the basins to the berm in the middle, which is considered a water course, because that's what actually impounds water. The bottom of the basin is just ancillary grading.
Okay, it's 54 feet from that. Okay, but not from the bottom of the basin. When you say it's ancillary grading, can you expand on what that means just for me?
It just means that it's the toe of the slope of the grading that's tying into the existing contours of the site.
Okay, what is the relationship with the pipe there? The stormwater pipe?
As far as the stormwater pipe that runs through the middle of the berm,
Yes.
I would have to ask the site engineer its specific nature. I would imagine it conveys stormwater, though.
Would it be 50 feet away?
If it's in the middle of the berm, so it'd be 54 feet away.
54 feet, okay. And then, so that measurement's to the middle of the berm?
That is correct.
Okay. How is this system going to be accessed? How is it going to be maintained?
Well, the east side of the property line, between the basin and where the edge of the tree line is, will be open grass where somebody could get back there to maintain it.
Can you, I'm so sorry, could you just explain to me where on the design that is?
Sure. Do you see the line that says FM?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is going to be maintained grass, and that's how you get back to the septic system.
Maintained grass. Okay, so there's not going to be any paved walkways there?
No.
Okay. And is that going to be, does that maintained grass, is that going to be sturdy enough for any kind of equipment that might need to get back there to do any repair, any maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. And I just wanted to go back to a question that a member of the board had and make sure that I have the right answer so that I have it for my notes. There's an alarm if the power is tripped, but there's no actual backup system on the system? Is that right?
Are you referring to a generator?
Yeah.
I don't know. As far as I know, there's no generator on the site. There's not going to be one for the septic system. Again, when the building's powered down, or some storm that happens, most likely folks won't be at work. Again, the upstream septic tank and the dosing tank have enough volume to store that until the power comes back on and then gets distributed to the septic system itself.
I might be wrong here. Because it's been a while since we were here, isn't this site going to be maybe 24/7?
I would have to ask the applicant on that. Is designed for employees to be there 24/7. Again, with this being a spec building, I don't know if it's going to be full 24 hours or not.
Okay, it's just, we can't really know when people are going to be at work or not if it's a 24/7 operation, wouldn't you say?
What's the question?
I just believe that the witness was making a explanation about, how maybe part of the reason that you don't have a generator is that if power's going to go out, people might not be at work. And if I misunderstood that, please let me know. And so I wanted to clarify that people might be at work at this site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But that's all I have on that question. And I think, so there's no changes to this plan aside from April, other than changing the soil from K3 to K4, and some minor technical calculations. Is that right?
Correct.
What are those calculations? Do you mind if I ask?
Sure. They just
Speak into the microphone, please.
Sure. So there was just some minor clarifications on if you scroll all the way down to the bottom and a little bit to the right, the dosing pump calculations. The new septic reviewer, the one that I spoke to that was going to approve the plan in January, retired. So somebody else took another look at it. They had a few questions. We gave them the calculations. There was nothing wrong with the calculations on the plan. The guy just misread something, and then he just wanted us to add the reserve volume within the dosing tank itself. Other than that, like I said, the soil mounded replacement was the only add to the plan.
Okay. I just have one more question. I appreciate that. Thank you. Because I was curious about that when you said calculations.
Yes.
How can you be sure that this system is never going to get over 2,000 gallons per day if the limit that you have right now is 1995 and that's a 5-gallon difference? How is it that you're so certain of that?
Again, this is how the calculations were derived. There's going to be a stipulation in they're proving, should the board act favorably, with limitations for employees and the deliveries. So if there's anything that would, be over that, there was enforcement that probably could be taken into action. What you're kind of alluding to, though, the system is designed with conservative measures within the septic code itself. And not only that, the septic bed itself applies basically a factor of safety, about 33% on the system itself. So it can accommodate more volume than what it's designed to, but again, we don't ever think that's going to happen.
And if it was going to have that larger capacity, it would need an amendment to the wastewater management plan of the county. Is that correct?
What I just spoke to, the factor of safety is already built into the septic code, and it's already on the approved plan.
Okay, thank you.
So, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
You just said the guy misread the numbers. So,
Sure. Would you
what
like-
guy and what numbers were misread?
His name is Chris Liberto. He's the guy who actually signed the plan, or the permit from the Monmouth County Health Department.
Okay.
And in the calculations, he didn't notice that we had 2 rows of laterals off of the central main system. So he was coming up with a lower number, and he wanted to know where he came up with the higher number. And we basically just clarified it for him.
And he's acknowledged that.
Considering he issued the permit, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
When performing the groundwater mounding analysis, did you assume the K3 disposal field or the K4 that's shown on the plans? And if so, did it back up into the treatment zone, considering it's within a foot of the bottom of the treatment zone?
So the groundwater mounding is a stormwater calculation.
You don't still have to look at mounding of this seasonal high groundwater into the treatment zone?
No, it's,
No.
when it goes in there, it's supposed to treat directly down into it, and then once it goes that way. It's not like a continuously fed system like a stormwater basin infiltrating every rainstorm. This system's, going to go off, once or twice a day, basically. So it gives it time to perk through it, so there's no availability for it to back up into the system. Good question, though.
Excuse me, I have a question. Can you elaborate, how you come up with that calculation of the 1995? You kept saying, the calculation
Sure.
says that.
So
Can you describe that?
Sure. So in 7:9, or 7(9)A, which is the subsurface disposal rules within the state, their calculation has 15 gallons per day per employee, and then 5 gallons per day per delivery. So doing that math gets you to 1995.
Everybody goes to the bathroom. What happens if everybody goes to the bathroom? That comes into this, so
Sure they will. Again,
twice or 3 times, what about there's deliveries with two people in the truck or 3 people in the truck?
but again, the 15 gallons and the 5 gallons per day, it has that factored into it for multiple uses throughout the day.
And let's say, back to stormwater issues, say it rains for a week, and everything that's perking into the stormwater management system around the building, off the gutters, into the rocks. With this being a sensitive area where water already flooding the roadway in this, on Victory Road, when it's high water table, then how's that gonna affect the septic? What about the septic raises up and it causes a sanitary issue and that goes onto the roadway?
So that's actually a really good question. The septic system has been designed as a mounted system. If you scroll down a little bit on the plans, I could give you kind of a profile.
I know.
Okay, so basically, and where it's located, and within respect to the above-ground basin, realistically, the only water that's going to get there is going to be what falls onto it, and everything else is going to go to the side of it.
So last, I guess it was the last time we were here, or the time before, Mr. Mercer, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Mercer, we were talking about the 28 inches of topsoil, and how that was gonna push water up and out into the roadway, okay?
Okay?
That was our biggest issue. And without even the septic even being a real factor, because you guys didn't have the entire plan of what we were gonna do. So that's where I have, I think that the main issue is, like I said, what about if it does rain for a week or more?
Right.
It could happen. All right?
Of course.
We have a lot of those problems. What is gonna prevent that septic system from completely rising up, not keeping up with the stormwater off the building, perking at a quick enough rate for the ground to get rid of it, because it's in a high area, and not affecting the roadway. You understand? I know you understand my question, but.
I understand your question. So the septic system, where it's located behind the above-ground basin, is in an area where it's really not going to affect drainage of the site. Again, there's a small area on top of the system that pushes the water around it. The stormwater basin itself is designed to hold the water, so anything going on to the septic system itself is going to push around it and go into the low spot in the wooded area behind it. The seasonal high water table that you're talking about has already been designed into the septic system itself. Again, knowing that it's only seasonal, like it's seasonal high, it does go down, but it has been designed to account for the highest groundwater that's, is noted in this area or observed during our test beds. So it has taken groundwater into account.
Is the lateral fill extension, the 2 foot, is that kind of like an industry standard?
That's, again, within the septic regs itself.
Got it.
When you do a mounted replacement system like that, they want 2 feet on the side of it as well, just so it doesn't move laterally.
Yep.
It has a little buffer there.
Got it.
So conditions for the approval for the septic. Was there in the scope considerations for, you mentioned the amount of gallons, the high limit. Are there monitors that will be included in this or projected to be included so that, because nobody's going to be inspecting this and if it exceeds that amount, is
Yes.
anybody going to know?
Absolutely. So if you actually scroll up a little bit, so you see the 4 circles in each corner, call that as inspection ports. And then if you scroll a little bit to the right on the plan, right there, so that's a detail of the inspection port. Basically, what's going to stick out of the ground is a PVC with a cap. So you are able to actually inspect it and make sure there's no, standing water within the stone bed area or anything like that, which allows you to say, all right, the septic system is working as designed.
I think what Mr. Mercer
Right.
is
So if the
how,
water table was high, right, if the water table was high, and then all of a sudden the septic limit is exceeded, are there going to be monitoring systems? Almost like an underground storage tank,
Right.
right? You have to include, is that what that is?
That's what the dosing tank is. So the dosing tank holds
And
the
is that alarmed
effluent.
back to notify somody?
Yes, that
Okay,
has an
okay.
alarm, it has
Okay.
floats and everything like that, where if it starts to get too high, it's noted, and then the maintenance crew will come out and service the site.
is there a meter on it that reads gallons that are pumped into the septic per day?
That's-
A flow meter?
I don't think, there's no provisions for it, so no.
Got it.
What's the elevation of the inlet pipe into the septic field?
Thank you. 60, I was going to say 65, or 7605. So elevation, 7605.
So this is going to be a mounded system?
This is going to be a mounded system, correct?
So we don't love that, just so you know. That's not a situation that we love here.
Well, but is there some ordinance provision?
No, there's not, but is there a way to grade it out to not require it to be mounded?
I mean, this is,
Require
again,
a larger footprint, correct, to do that?
potentially.
That would require a larger footprint, correct, if you were to have to grade it out?
Yes.
Much larger.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking.
Yep.
Yes.
So, again, there's, the mounted system is, in my opinion, a good design, especially where it's located and the topography around it. It's not naturally sloping from one side to the other. Again, because it's flat, mounted systems are very common, and again, in my opinion, the best approach for.
So that's not my question. Is there a way to grade it out so that it's not mounded?
I don't believe so, just because of the size of the system, to get the minimum and maximum distance on top of the septic system on one side to the other, I don't believe it's going to be feasible.
So the 28 inches that the ground is being raised, this is going to be mounded above that 28 inches, correct?
Yep,
It'd be huge.
yep.
Again, where it's located, it is surrounded by trees, but, so you should not be able to see it from Victory Road. Again, it will be grass. It's not like it's a treatment plant or anything like that. This is,
Respectfully, like, we've had, like, there's a strip center on Route 9, not far from here, that has a mounted system in the front yard, which I don't necessarily think the board anticipated was gonna be there. So, they wanna know what's gonna look like, honestly. Was it always anticipated to be a mounted system?
correct.
So I'm just saying, you know, we don't typically love that, and I'm not saying it's not permitted, but it's definitely something that we need to understand the visual impact associated with it. And whether it's visual from the front yard or not, whatever, but
Mr. Kelly, do you believe that there's going to be any type of adverse visual impact from this system?
In my opinion, no.
have you evaluated that? Have you taken photos from the road to see whether you could see it or not?
I have not.
Okay, thanks.
Mrs. B,
Yes, sir.
the visual thing is one thing, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to look at a mound, you know, whoever drives by, whatever.
Yep.
But I think myself and some of the board members here are more concerned with the water table and pushing everything to the road. We spoke about this last time with the 28 inches, and I am just still not convinced with stormwater and septic at the same time in the event of multiple rainstorms or a 30-inch snowstorm and everything melting off, and the high water table, everything perking up and pushing to Victory Road.
I totally understand that.
Oh.
This is just an addition to that. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, Jen.
Yes, sir.
Is there any landscaping that Sherry would need to be getting involved with on a mounted system, or has that already been discussed?
You can't landscape.
You can't
on a
put anything on it, right?
Correct.
So it's just a
The
mound.
root system
We don't
could
want no
clog it
roots
up.
around it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big,
Yeah, and then
big
how
bubble.
about-
That's what I was gonna ask, is there any trees or anything around it that could clog it up? Because you were talking about trees or brush
You got a
blocking
tree,
it
you got a
from
tree
view.
line next to it, correct?
Correct.
And that tree line is the property line?
No, the property line's even farther from the system. The system was designed where within 10 feet of it, there's no trees, which is in the septic regs.
But you mentioned it was going to be surrounded by trees. Is that by the road side?
If you look at the plan,
Right.
you see the
The
black, the black line where it looks like squigglies.
Yeah, I can see it.
Eileen, just for the record, this is, when we're looking at this plan, this is A68?
There you go.
Yes? Okay.
Laura's doing it, not me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura. This is A68, this is the plan that's on the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple more questions, but whenever the board is done, I just wanted to.
Sure. Does anybody have anything? Floor is yours, Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just very briefly, so Mr. Kelly, you mentioned that there's not going to be an impact of the stormwater mounding from below the infiltration basin on the system. Have we done any mounding analysis on that basin?
For the stormwater basin, I'd have to ask the site engineer.
Okay. I also wanted to ask you, when you did those test pits, that seasonal high water table was, you thought acceptable. Do you have any idea when those test pits were done, what time of year?
It's in the geotech report that was
Okay.
submitted as part of the application.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. You talked about the number of employees in a 24-hour period. is that going to change at all in shifts? Or is it going to, that's a max 24-hour period?
24-hour period.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good?
Thank you.
Okay, sure. Anybody else? Mr. Simon?
I have no further questions for this witness.
Okay. I guess at this time, I will open it up to the public for questions only for the septic. Just questions, no testimony. Sir, come on up. Just remind everybody, please speak clearly into the microphone. It's not the best equipment here.
Hey, sir, if you could just state and spell your name and give us your address.
Mike Bernstein, 3 Colleen Court, Howell.
Mr. Bernstein?
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Everybody tonight?
All right.
I just have a question that no one has asked. How is this system vented? Every system has to be vented. If it's a septic system, it's got to be vented or it's going to be overpressurized. Now, right now, I understand that he's saying that that's going to be on the edge of the property where it's not going to affect anybody, but at some point, that property is going to get sold. Something's going to happen on that property next door, but right next to this vented septic system. That's my first question. The second question is, all the calculations that you're using...
Into the microphone, please.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
All the calculations that you're using, how old are the calculations that you're basing what you're presenting here tonight? Because the weather has changed. There's plenty of instances in Howell that everybody sitting here and there know that flood now that never did before, when we were promised that that never could happen. Like he's saying that could never happen. Well, it's happened. And I just want to know, and maybe you'll tell them, how old are the calculations, and how is the system vented, and how are you going to prevent that from going anywhere near what's close to it? Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Kelly?
In regards to the septic calculations, they've been within the past year for how the sewage flows have been generated. How old the septic rules themselves are within the state, I'd have to look at the code when those were adopted, but this has been common practice for years.
It's in accordance with the rules. The calculations were done in 2024?
And 2023.
Okay. And then he had a question regarding the venting.
The venting, yes, within the septic tank itself, there's a effluent filter that kind of filters out the gas deflecting. Years ago, they used to use a gas deflector, so it didn't just go directly out. Yeah, and now they just have an effluent filter to kind of filter that out for the smell and everything.
Got it. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Just questions only at this time? Sure.
Also,
Are you represented by counsel?
Yes, you've let us ask a question before, so I wasn't sure if I was going to be allowed to.
No, if you're represented by counsel, your counsel does the cross-examination. You can testify, but your counsel is
Okay.
responsible for
Thank you.
cross-examination.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public questions at this time. Mr. Simon?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have no further witnesses at this time.
Okay.
Other than, I recall there may be a couple of members of the public who still didn't have a chance maybe to cross-examine.
Well,
or make statements. Or
yeah, we're going to do that. I
combination
think
of
I've
statements.
been requested by a few here to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Just
So-
before we do that, Mr.
Sure.
Chair, Ms. Ferguson, do you have any witnesses you want to put up tonight in rebuttal?
Not right now. No, I
Okay.
do not tonight. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so we're going to just adjourn for a 5-minute break.
Okay. Thank you.
The board will now recess until 8:16.
Mr. Simon, anything else?
No, I think it's up, we're open to
Okay.
public comment, and
Yeah,
I think, just so the record's clear.
Sure.
My recollection is that we started public comment, correct?
I don't know if it was comment or question, seeing as it was 11 months ago.
I think there were some comments.
I think there was comments.
We started public comment, Mr. Chair, but I would just,
I'm just going to open it up.
yeah, that's be my
I
recommendation.
just wanted the record.
Sure, sorry.
So,
I don't know what I had for
Mr.
dinner
Chair, my
yesterday.
recommendation would be, Ms. Ferguson, if you have clients who would like to testify, I guess we could take your list first.
Okay, sure. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay, I just need to swear you in first. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Betty Velez Gimbel, Velez hyphen Gimbel, Gimbel,
And your address?
97 Victory Road.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. Okay. So in response to the tenant use, the different tenant use group kicks in required number of fixtures and additional fixtures. The 2021 National Standard Plumbing Code requires certain fixtures based on the type of use and use group. Yet they don't know the use yet. So for example, adding a possible mop, sink, or eye wash station would increase the amount of water use. They are using basic use of BS-1, and if they put any other specialty flex use like F1 or F2 or all B, then the fixture count will change a lot, and 1,995 gallons will go up very quickly. In comment to the mounted system, it wasn't always designed that way because they didn't even have a septic design until now. Let's see. As far as the 24/7 use, if my math serves me correctly, that's 3 shifts of 8 hours apiece. So that's a lot more people using this septic system. And right now, they still don't have DEP approval. Thank you.
Council, I think that's all I have for my
Okay,
part.
so Mr. Chair, we can open it up to the rest of the public now.
Okay, if anyone would like to come up and comment on this application, now is your time. Sir, come on up.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, sir, if you just get close to the mic and state and spell your name and give us your address.
Yes, my name's Wayne Senatori. I live at 245 Thoroughbred Drive, Freehold, North Howell
And
Township.
Mr. Senatori, can you just spell your last name for us?
Senatori.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I just have a couple of questions with the announcement from the town manager the other day about the property in question on the application being potentially bought by the town. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. And I don't know if you're allowed to tell me this, but I'll ask it anyway. Who is the town negotiating with for this
Sir,
property?
We're the planning board. We're an autonomous agency.
Yeah.
So this board has nothing to do, or not even knowledgeable about anything that the township may be pursuing. We're not part of those conversations. It's not anything that we have jurisdiction to look at, so we have no information on that.
Okay, so you can't answer the question, but doesn't it seem funny that right now you're trying to approve an application with property that's probably going to be negotiated with the town?
We're not trying to approve anything. We're hearing an application.
I understand.
And we're constrained by the municipal land use law.
Yes.
Here's what happens if we don't hear an application. There are certain timeframes that the municipal land use law provides that a decision must be made. And if the board determines that it's just not going to hold a hearing, then the applicant has a right to go to court and get what's called an automatic approval, which takes this board out of it. And it's happened in other municipalities. So the process here would actually wind up with an approval without our participation at all, an ability to approve or deny the application if we didn't hear the application.
Okay, so are you up at that gate, at that fence? You're at that fence?
We're past it. We're
You're past
living
the
on,
fence.
the applicant has given various extensions of time. So we are at the limit of the last extension of time that we received.
Okay, so I just, my basic questions were all around that. So I guess I can't ask questions like that, since you have no jurisdiction or no knowledge.
Certainly, at
of
the
it.
governing body, you can ask those questions, but here, it's just not anything that the law allows us to pursue, nor would we be involved in any negotiations to purchase the property. It's just not anything that the law allows us to get into.
Okay, well, then I apologize for wasting
You're not
everybody's
wasting
time.
anybody's time, sir.
All right, anyone else?
Hey, you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
My name is Mark Parisi, Marcparisi. Address is 2 Castle Court.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Parisi.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Board.
Evening.
I just wanted to remind that, our ordinances, Section 188-6, Environmental Impact Report, states in Section D that, and I'll read from our ordinances. Upon completion of all reviews and public hearings, the planning board shall consider the environmental impact record, and if the planning board finds that the proposed development will result in substantial damage to any of the elements of the environment set forth in this section, which is not adequately resolved or avoided by the applicant's proposal, the planning board may deny the application. And then the ordinance in Section E goes on to list the following subsections that are to be considered. 1, stability of the soil during and after the proposed alteration. 2, drainage patterns and effect on surface water runoff. 3, effect on springs. 4, potential effect on animals and significant plant species. 5, potential air and water pollution, especially on any potential increase in siltation. 6, effect of any construction plans or other environmental changes on critical slope areas or sewage disposal systems. 7, problems related to rock removal. 8, amount of resulting non-agricultural displacement of soils. 9, potential noise pollution. 10, increase in amount of industrial waste. 11, increased problems of industrial or non-industrial waste disposal. 12, circumstances or conditions that are peculiar to the site or to the application under consideration that are not generally applicable to sites or applications in the same general locality, and that would result in imposition of an undue burden on the applicant if an environmental impact report were required. The other thing that I just think that's important to put on the record is that the last time we had this hearing was in November 2nd, 2023. Just prior to that, this planning board adopted a master plan re-exam in which there was recommendations to remove the SED zone in this particular, around Victory Road area. Following that, our council took action in the beginning of this year, in January 16th, if I'm not mistaken, to rezone this property to ARE 6 residential. Now, I understand that this application was filed long before the zoning change and that it's protected under the time of application rule, but I think it's important for this record that this board and the policy of our governing body was that it didn't see fit that a warehouse of this size is developed on this particular property. And I just think that that needs to be part of this record, and I thank everyone tonight.
Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide this board is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state and spell your name and give us your address.
Good evening, board, professionals, and council, and members of the public. My name is Lawrence White, W-H-I-T-E. I reside at 15 W-R-E-N-W-A-Y in Howell, New Jersey.
Can you go back, where do you live?
15 W-R-E-N-W-A-Y.
Renway.
I have to spell it because the W is silent.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Well, folks, I'm sure if you took a poll in this town, about 90% of the people in this town would say it's insane to put a warehouse on Victory Road. This is a winding, bucolic road filled with residences and farms, including livestock farms, and it's got a high water table, it's got winding roads, it's got weak access to 547, and no one in their right mind would think that you should put a 200,000 square foot warehouse on this property. I understand that the board is constrained by the municipal land use law, and that this was, at the time of application, a permitted use on this particular parcel of land. But I will say that this entire township has been let down by our town council, who failed to change the zoning regulations after they defeated the Monmouth Commerce mega warehouse. In 2020, they could have changed the zoning laws. They didn't until 2023, and that's what allowed this application to come on a very inappropriate parcel of land. And I just want that to be part of the record this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last chance. Close the public portion. Mr. Simon?
Chairman, I'd
Sure.
recommend that we permit Ms. Ferguson
Yeah, Ms.
closing
Ferguson, please.
comments, and then the applicant's counsel closing comments.
Sure.
Thank you very much, council. I gave Ms. Rubano a little drive. I just had a visual I wanted to show. It's not evidence, it's just a demonstrative. It's basically cites from the transcripts, because there's been so many hearings. And if the board would humor me, I'd love to put it up visually. It's not anything new, it's basically quotes from the past
Give
hearings.
us one moment.
She has the drive. What are you looking?
drive, what is it named?
Oh, I think it's Howell 919.
Can I just have a proffer as to what you're referring to?
It's basically, it's a slide deck, and it basically just goes through the testimony that's been, it's not going to be long, what's been given so far, and it's not arguments, it's just
You're
facts
saying it's
about-
excerpts from the transcript?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you looking for the PowerPoint or the PDF?
PDF is fine. They're both the same. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, I'm Zoe Ferguson, and I was before the board with another attorney about 10 months ago, and I just wanted to give the board a little bit of a visual reminder of some of the things that we've gone through so far, and some of the reasons this application should be denied. So we go to the next slide. So the applicant presented.
Wait,
Yes.
excuse me.
Yes.
I'm sorry. There's a difference between showing on a slide transcript pages and, for example, let's say highlighting some language in a transcript page to make a point. I get that. That's certainly fair and appropriate. But to provide a PowerPoint presentation of a summation, let alone not providing anyone with a copy of it until this very, very moment, I
Do you
believe is
really want to go into
inappropriate.
not providing people with copies when
Yeah.
we receive something 3 hours before the hearing?
So I don't believe that she can certainly read it, but now I'm seeing visuals and evidence being made part of the record.
Well, here's my recommendation, Mr. Chair. Rules of evidence are not strictly applicable. To the extent that I think the board can give it its appropriate weight, and I think we can assess whether there's any new information that is being provided rather than a summary of information that was already part of the record. To the extent it's new information, we'll have to determine how to proceed, but so far, we haven't gotten into it. But we will evaluate as we go.
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't want to present any new information. Essentially, it's a verbal summation, which is, yes, argumentative about why the application shouldn't be granted, but it's based only on testimony that's already been given. There's citations to each of these images that are all from the applicant's own materials. This is from septic design from January, not from today's design. And it's just facts. So certainly if there's any information that the board would deem to be new, please let me know, and I would honor that.
My objection is noted, but you can proceed.
Thank you very much. And I'll be as brief as I can. I don't want to waste anybody's time. So the applicant presented witnesses several times last year, April, May, June, October, and November. I know there's been some changes on the board since then. We presented our witness, Jeff Gull, an engineer from Princeton Hydro. He's actually here beside me. And our last hearing was November 2nd, at which point the applicant was, I think, ready to proceed, but then there was some confusion about the septic system, and we decided to come back for that. And the next slide, please. This is not, this is not current because it's not from today. So I guess I can skip this. Thank you. This is also a slide that talks about the proposed septic design, which is also not from today. However, from the testimony elicited from Mr. Kelly today, this is still accurate. So the gallonage proposed for the septic design is 1,995 gallons per day. It's 5 gallons less than 2,000 gallons per day. And you've heard Mr. Kelly's testimony that not ever, not once in any situation would this go over 2,000 gallons per day. If that were to happen, it would require state approval and county amendment to the water management plan. But that's, according to their engineer, never going to happen. It's also not including any additional design criteria, such as any additional sink stations, showers, or process waste, which is what testimony was given today by Mr. Kelly. The next slide. This is going to be the portion that is not, this is coming from transcripts, that's citations, but it's, these are the argumentative points. This is, of course, not, facts that the applicant has brought, but this is what our expert has testified to, and he's also here. So I'm going to set forth a couple of different issues with the stormwater and give in summation why this application should be denied. The first one, and I'm going to go over them in some detail, not too much. The next slide is going to be about the recharge issues. It's the first issue. But very briefly, the first one is that the groundwater recharge requirements under the Howell ordinance, Howell's own ordinance incorporates the DEP groundwater recharge requirements. And those ordinance provisions are not being met because the groundwater, as we elicited testimony about 10 months ago, maybe more than that, maybe it was last October, groundwater is going to be added to the storm sewer system. So at one of the infiltration basins, I believe it was basin number 4, Mr. Gold testified, and you can go to the next slide, please. Actually, 2 slides. Yeah, thank you very much. Or actually, I'll go to the next slide, thank you. Okay, here we go. Mr. Gold testified that the applicant has this proposal to place anti-seep collars around the underground pipes. And the applicant testified, I believe Mr. Lamb testified, that that would stop the groundwater from flowing around the pipes and going into the infiltration basin. Why does that matter? Who cares? Because if water goes from the groundwater flowing around the pipes into the basin, that's adding additional water that hasn't been considered in the recharge requirements. And so we're not only putting stormwater in the basin, we're also putting groundwater in the basin. And so there's some recharge, but not the recharge that's required under the DEP regulations, and more importantly, the Howell ordinance, which is within this board's purview for sure. Next slide, please. Next issue that Mr. Gold testified about is that the applicant's interpretation of the elevation of the groundwater seems very curious and a bit strange credulity, because there seems to be just enough separation from the bottom of the basin to the seasonal high groundwater table. Just enough directly underneath one basin, but barely any on either side of the basin. I believe it was a couple of inches. That's a requirement for the NJDP regulations and the Howell ordinances. And so if that basic recharge requirement of 2 feet separation isn't being met, which it seems difficult to believe that it is being met, if it's conveniently just enough under one spot but not working on the other sides, then that's something the applicant has to show. And if they can't show that, then this can't be approved. The next slide, please. Mr. Gold also testified that the groundwater mounting calculations don't meet the best practices. So the NJDEP BMPs, the best management practices, are incorporated into Howell's stormwater ordinance. He testified that these calculations, as they were done for basin number 4, which I think is the large, long basin on the east side of the property, but regardless, one of the stormwater basins, the calculations there seem not to meet the ordinance because the water isn't going to be able to drain in compliance with those BMPs incorporated into the ordinance. And as a result, we're going to potentially have scum, algae, mosquito breeding issues. For all the reasons that we don't want extra water in that basin, those are the real-life reasons that you're thinking about that this application should be denied. Next slide, please. I promise I'm only a couple more minutes, and then I will stop talking. The green infrastructure standards at the stormwater rule for the state, which are incorporated into the Howell ordinance, require that the max drainage area for a small-scale basin is 2.5 acres. So each of these basins that you can see on the right, and that's from the applicant's drainage plan from June 5th, 2023, those basins are all kind of clumped together. Mr. Gold testified that those basins really should be spread across the site to mimic recharge. Next slide, please. And then the final thing that's related to stormwater and the environment is the applicant's proposal to put some trees in or on the berms. And I know there was some discussion about that you can put plant material in the basin, but this is not in the basin, it's on the berms. And so Mr. Gold did explain and give some information about how that shouldn't be permitted on embankment surfaces. And then the very last slide that I'm going to show, actually this slide I'm going to stop on for a minute, thank you. The board's position here, the board's role for this town and the people in the town is to make a decision about whose witnesses are credible, who's provided the board with full information, and provided a perspective that we can trust and rely on. The applicant here has provided a number of different interpretations of their own information, including brand new information on multiple occasions. It's not clear what they're going to put here. They don't even know what they're going to put here. And the board has the opportunity and the legal obligation to assess the credibility of the experts of the different sides. And so if the board should so choose, they have the duty to decide which experts to rely on. And we submit that that should be ours and not the applicant's. And the next slide is one final word, and I really am done, about traffic safety. The traffic engineer, back in the day, you may recall, those of you who were here on the board, Ms. Penke came several times before the board very dutifully and gave lots of testimony about traffic safety. One thing that's going to be added here on the site, or actually off the site, is going to be an easement on the property, which the applicant doesn't own, that's at the intersection with 547. That's going to be paving over, rounding out that lot so that they can actually turn trucks in and out of the site. It's clear from Ms. Penke's testimony that there's no clear number on how many of those trucks are going to be going over the center line when turning right onto Route 547. These illustrations are from the applicant's truck turning concept plan by Langen on February 23rd, 2023. And they show different iterations of trucks and how far they're going to go over the center line. We would submit that this is essentially ingress and egress to the site. This is on an easement that the applicant has purchased for the applicant's truck traffic. And that's something the board should consider. And so at the end of the day, the board's heard the testimony of our witnesses, the applicant's witnesses. The board has sat through many of these hearings and is very well equipped to make the decisions that need to be made. In terms of honoring not only Howell's ordinances, but the spirit of this property and what the town has made clear, this application should not go through. There's serious flooding issues that have not yet been properly addressed, and I think that the board would do well to, follow that and take seriously the issues that we have with the environment on this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Simon?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board professionals, Ms. Ferguson, And members of the public, we want to thank you for your attention and frankly, your participation as part of this application. And when you have an application before a board and you have public participation, it is always, in my humble opinion, a very good thing. Because what you're trying to do, as an applicant certainly, is to get the best plan possible. And receiving input, not just from, of course, your excellent board professionals, but also members of the public, helps in almost all circumstances to achieve a better plan. And in this case, a fully compliant plan that I will get into in a moment. As you know, the applicant here is seeking preliminary and final major site plan approval to construct a warehouse building with loading docks, trailer parking spaces, and passenger vehicle parking spaces. This property is almost 20 acres in size. It is deemed to be located for purposes of this application within the Special Economic Development Zone District along Victory Road. This development fully complies, 100% complies with the use and bulk standards applicable to the SED zone. In terms of design waivers or exceptions under Section 51B of the Municipal Land Use Law, the only one that we believe is required is under Section 188-195A regarding tree replacement, where it says all required replacement trees shall be planted on the site from which trees were removed if possible. Some folks think that that doesn't require or trigger a waiver. We're going to be conservative, and to the extent that it does require a waiver, certainly we're making a contribution to be deposited in the Township Tree Fund due to the limited available planting area, and we've put on the record, I believe it's over $300,000 that's going to be contributed to the Township Tree Fund should approval be granted for this application. Also, to the extent that there may be a possible waiver for two driveway widths being 30 feet, where the ordinance in one section says that driveway widths exceeding 24 feet shall be approved by the planning board. We've also provided testimony, again, in a conservative mode to the extent that a design waiver or exception is required for that type of relief. As you know, we've entered many, many exhibits over many hearings in connection with this application, some of which were in direct response to comments made by the public, by your board professionals, by the board, by Mr. Gall. We've put on various witnesses. You heard from Jeremy Lang, the Director of Development for Active Acquisitions. You heard from Tung To Lam of Bowler Engineering, the engineer on the project, Sean Nager, the architect on the project, Kerry Penke from Langen Engineering, our traffic and circulation consultant, Michael Morris from GZA Geo Environmental, who discussed the environmental condition of the property, Christine Cafone, our professional planner on the project, who went over those design waivers that I just mentioned. And tonight, you heard from Victor Kelly of Colliers Engineering as to the septic design, which includes the county approval that we just obtained. And we certainly, sincerely believe that we have addressed, and we will continue, of course, to address all conditions and requirements set forth in the various reports submitted by the board professionals, unless to the extent otherwise addressed and dealt with during the course of these hearings. And certainly we would continue to work with Ms. Newman, Ms. Beam, Ms. Spiro to address any outstanding technical requirements or concerns. So let's talk about the law for a second. For a fully conforming application, the board's role in reviewing a site plan application for a permitted use is limited as a matter of law. The board is to review such an application solely for compliance with the applicable municipal ordinances. A board is not, as a matter of law, for any fully conforming application, permitted to deny an application based on concerns that are unrelated to an applicant's compliance with the ordinance and the municipal land use law, and that is not based on affirmative evidence presented at an underlying hearing. We have, as the applicant, presented all information required by the township ordinances to demonstrate full compliance with the ordinance's requirements for site plan approval. We've also provided, as I stated, additional information requested by the board, requested by your professionals for consideration of the application. We presented extensive expert witness testimony. And as Mr. Cachero is going to advise you, presumably, in the Pizzo-Manton case, the New Jersey Supreme Court restricted the power of planning boards to deny land use applications for permitted uses. And the quote is that the denial of a site plan application for a permitted use would be a drastic action when the pertinent ordinance standards are met. A planning board's authority in reviewing a site plan application is, again, whether it conforms to the municipality's zoning and site plan ordinances. A board does not have authority to prohibit a use that's otherwise permitted, as in this case, by the municipality's zoning ordinance. The board is also well aware that it has no authority to deny a site plan for a permitted use because of any anticipated detrimental impact on off-track traffic conditions. And that is the Dunkin' Donuts versus North Brunswick case. I happen to notice that Ms. Ferguson cherry-picked a sentence, a quote, from the Dunkin' Donuts case that talks about off-site traffic. Let's be clear. Off-site traffic is not to be considered for a permitted use, with the one exception is if it's exactly right outside the ingress and egress to a particular site. When an applicant meets the site plan ordinance standards, an application may not be denied because of off-site traffic or other conditions. That is the Meridian Quality Care case, Lionel's Appliance case, Dunkin' Donuts case. The Appellate Division and the New Jersey Supreme Court have repeatedly stated that. New Jersey courts specifically have held that any increases in traffic that result from a particular development application for a permitted use were, by definition, necessarily considered by the governing body when adopting ordinances making certain uses permitted. In other words, the mere increase in traffic may not be used as the reason to deny an application for a permitted use. It's beyond this planning board's jurisdiction. And the municipal land use law specifically provides for off-track improvements that a municipality may require a developer to make as a condition to be imposed by either a planning board, in some cases a board of adjustment, for approval of a site plan. That's section 42 of the municipal land use law, and that deals with things such as a contribution to necessary off-site street improvements. So if you're going to increase the width of a particular roadway and you ask the developer to contribute their pro rata share to that off-track improvement, under Section 42 of the Municipal Land Use Law, that is permitted, but not to consider denying an application because of anything related to off-site traffic circulation impacts. So in this case, we asked for particular waivers or exceptions. One has to the need to make a financial contribution for the trees and also the width of the driveways that I already talked about. The property, as you know, is heavily wooded. It's not capable of being developed unless it was cleared. The applicant has thus proposed waiver relief to permit an in lieu financial contribution, which we believe is appropriate considering the condition of the property and, in fact, that is heavily wooded. So that would be under Section 51B. And of course, I already talked about the fact that there's a discrepancy in the ordinance between a driveway that's greater 24 feet to be approved by the board, given consideration to the width and curbing, et cetera, and the fact that for commercial or industrial uses, that main driveways shall be a minimum of 30 feet wide. We believe that we're fully compliant and that no driveway relief is required for this application. And in fact, I believe that the board has previously determined in connection with other applications that the proposed 30-foot wide driveway for warehouse uses is in fact compliant with the ordinance requirements. But again, to be conservative under both the tree removal and the width of the driveway, we're asking for relief under Section 51B. And it goes without mentioning, although I will mention it, that there's been no testimony or evidence offered or provided by the public, by anyone, in opposition to these waivers or exception requests, or that any variance or additional waiver or exception are required by the applicant for this application. Let me take a moment to talk about stormwater. Regarding stormwater management, the board is aware that through the course of many hearings on this application, through the course of the expert witnesses that the applicant presented, and certainly with regard to the board engineer's most recent letter dealing with stormwater management dated October 27th, 2023, the applicant believes it has fully complied with all ordinance requirements, all state regulations regarding stormwater design, stormwater management plan, and certainly the applicant will also certainly fully comply with all technical comments that have been made, particularly with regard to the stormwater management design, including those comments in the latest CME letter dated October 27th, 2023. And we continue to contend that our stormwater management plan and our design fully complies with all applicable regulations and ordinances. We also believe that we have fully addressed Mr. Gall's testimony on the various issues, some of which were raised by Ms. Ferguson in her PowerPoint summation regarding this application. I will note parenthetically that during my cross-examination of Mr. Gall, I went back to the transcript today just to double check. On June, I believe it was 12th, Mr. Gall began his testimony. And I asked him, did you prepare any type of report for this application? He said no. And then I said, are you looking at notes? And he said, yes, I'm looking at notes. I said, well, are those notes in written form that you prepared a writing? And he said, no, they're just notes. Well, that was on June 12th, 2023. And then in late February of 2024, Ms. Ferguson, I believe, sent an email to the board and asking that, and it enclosed a report from Mr. Gall, and said This represents a summation of Mr. Gall's testimony. And it was dated when? It was dated June 5th of 2023. It was dated even prior to him beginning testimony. It was marked as 05 for the record, and I believe it should be stricken certainly from the record. Mr. Gall made various suggestions or statements throughout his testimony in June and in October as to the applicant's stormwater management plan. And as you all know, as to those suggestions or statements that we contended warranted a response, comprehensive response, we either explained through evidence and testimony why we respectfully disagreed with Mr. Gall with line and verse, pointing to the regulations, pointing to the ordinance, pointing to best practices, showing additional exhibits, designs, specifications, why we respectfully disagreed with him, or in some cases, based on Mr. Gall's comments, we actually modified the stormwater plan to address those concerns. For example, Mr. Gall was happy to see, and I believe Ms. Ferguson mentioned this in her summation, was happy to see that we're proposing watertight joints to eliminate water from getting into the pipes. And he asked that, I just want you to check the buoyancy calculation to demonstrate that these pipes are not going to lift out of the ground. So what did we do? We responded by providing the buoyancy calculations to demonstrate that, in fact, they would not do so. Mr. Gall also stated that there may be an interception of seasonal high groundwater by the stormwater pipes in the French drains, thereby negating the full infiltration benefits of the recharge basin. What did Mr. Lamb do? Mr. Lamb responded by providing anti-seep collars to eliminate any increased stormwater flow through the pipe trench from any preferential path. And by extending, there was a liner, if you recall, we extended the proposed liner all the way to the surface of the trench to demonstrate that we're going to be preventing any groundwater from entering into the French drain. Again, Mr. Lamb provided an explanation, a response to each one of Mr. Gall's comments that, again, warranted a response, and stated that the applicant would fully comply with all of CME's comments in their various review letters to the extent not done to date. At no time was there any specific regulation or ordinance that was identified that resulted in this applicant being required to amend their application to present a variance request, or to amend their application to present any type of exception or waiver request under Section 51B of the Municipal Land Use Law. Not one. There was no, throughout the entire testimony of Mr. Gall, because I asked him, Mr. Cachero asked him, point to one variance or waiver exception that is triggered by your testimony that we have not addressed. And the answer was no, I cannot point to any. And certainly, again parenthetically, if Mr. Gall had done so, what would we have done? We would have, of course, revised the plans to comply, or we would have requested exception design relief and provided evidence on the record why that was warranted. We never even got to that. And I also remind the board that since the applicant has applied for a freshwater wetlands permit from the DEP, that permit application triggers a review by the DEP of the project's stormwater management plan. And again, I mentioned it earlier this evening. And Mr. Cachero agreed with me, Section 22B provides that a board approval shall be conditioned on approvals by other governmental agencies, such as the DEP with jurisdiction in appropriate instances. In other words, the stormwater management plan, besides being reviewed by your professionals, is also going to be fully reviewed by the NJDEP. Again, we believe through our expert testimony that we are fully compliant with the township ordinance and regulations in all respects regarding stormwater management. There will also be BMP compliance per the applicant's geotech and mounding analysis. There's going to be an operation and maintenance manual reviewed and approved by the township that's going to be recorded as a lien against the property to guarantee in perpetuity the maintenance by the property owner of the stormwater management plan in accordance with the approved plan. So again, we believe that we have more than provided in a thorough, comprehensive basis all pertinent information, including that asked of us, sufficient to assess and confirm the adequacy and the feasibility of the applicant's stormwater management plan, again, in compliance with the ordinance and the applicable state regulations. Let's talk for a minute about traffic. And by the way, I looked up at Ms. Ferguson's PowerPoint, which included, I think, one slide about the testimony of Ms. Penke and that right-hand turn. And just so the board is aware, the slide that Ms. Ferguson showed was a slide of existing conditions. It was not a slide of proposed conditions regarding that intersection. So I wanted just to mention that right from the get-go. We have provided, certainly, extensive traffic and circulation testimony by Ms. Penke. The public failed to provide any expert traffic circulation testimony challenging our experts' analysis and conclusions or providing any type of alternatives. None. The site driveways, as testified to by Ms. Penke, will operate at acceptable levels of service, and they're designed to provide safe and adequate access, circulation, appropriate sight lines, all per the testimony provided. The driveway designs, driveway widths are going to allow vehicles to enter and exit the site safely and efficiently. While not relevant to the board's site plan review, for all the reasons I stated earlier under Dunkin' Donuts and its progeny, the proposed warehouse is not expected to significantly alter the traffic operations in the study area during the peak hour, as testified to by Ms. Penke, and that intersections will operate, in fact, at acceptable levels of service. The proposed voluntary road improvements by the applicant, if you remember, including along the S-curve, that the applicant has proposed will obviously improve conditions, not just for vehicles that are entering and exiting this particular site, but for all types of drivers coming from any direction, and certainly make those conditions safer for the benefit of the general public. The proposed additional pavement, the additional striping, the signage proposed at the S-curve, and again, these are voluntary conditions of approval for this application. And if you recall, I mentioned about under Section 42, an applicant would typically, for these types of improvements, agree just to contribute their pro rata share. The applicant affirmatively stated on more than one occasion throughout the course of this presentation of this application that they would agree to contribute to make these improvements on their own to make the curve and the roadway safer for all types of vehicles. Regarding the right turns at Victory Road in Lakewood, as you saw from Ms. Ferguson's PowerPoint, school buses today are making that right-hand turn, and they are encroaching over the center line today. Per DOT, Department of Transportation standards, given that the majority of traffic making that turn is a passenger car vehicle, the intersection, as a matter of law, does not need to be designed for those larger vehicles. There is no intersection improvement, whether it's secured by easement or otherwise, is necessary for this project as a matter of law. And we testified and we provided evidence that we do not believe that any of the trucks from the development for this site are even going to be making that right-hand turn in the first place, given the anticipated circulation off-site and where trucks are going to go from our site. That being said, we did voluntarily, admittedly, secure an easement on a proactive basis so that both existing traffic, such as school buses, and any additional traffic from the proposed development can make a right-hand turn without moving into the oncoming traffic lane, believing that the board may want us to do so based on some of the questioning by the board members and the board professionals. And certainly, while the easement currently remains part of our proposal, it is up to the board to determine whether you believe that it is necessary given the evidence and testimony provided. If the board determines that the easement is not necessary, that's fine. If it's determined that the easement is necessary, it is also fine. In other words, we will not pursue the easement with the township and the county if that is ultimately the desire of this board. But if the easement is required by the board, it's going to become part of the public roadway improvement, and once offered by the applicant and accepted by the township and the county, it will be an off-track improvement under Section 42 of the municipal land use law, again, not located on the property, not located on the closest half of the abutting street or right-of-way of the property. And again, even as the off-track improvement under Section 42 of the municipal land use law, where they would only be responsible to provide their pro rata share, they remain willing to pay the full cost of that contemplated improvement. So where are we? We are proud of this application and the process that has led us here, because the process allowed for what the applicant and the board together with the public should want for a fully conforming development application, which is a conforming application that is not to slop together, but is thoughtfully conceived and then made better by the input of the public, including, as I mentioned earlier, the input of Mr. Gall. That's all you want, respectfully believe, as a board for a development application. And as a board attorney, which I am for a number of municipalities, instructing my board on a fully conforming application, I would say to you, as an applicant's attorney, that we believe the law requires that the application as submitted and the testimony and the evidence provided warrants an approval of this application. We believe that the proposed development is appropriate. We believe it's fully compliant with the law. And accordingly, we again thank you for your attention and your patience throughout the many months in this application. But we do ask the board to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just a few things.
Sure.
And then, of course, any questions that the board may have. I'll begin just with the one objection to regarding evidence, specifically Exhibit 05. My recommendation would be that the board continue to accept the exhibit and to give it whatever weight it deems appropriate for that exhibit, and not to to exclude the exhibit. With regard to the board's role in any site plan application, the jurisdiction of any planning board is tightly circumscribed by both the municipal land use law as well as the decisions of New Jersey's courts. The role is, well, let me start off with the role is not. The board is not a legislative body. So the case law is clear that the board doesn't get to disagree with the governing body as to what uses are permitted or not permitted in a zone. That's a legislative decision, and if you make a decision based upon your disagreement with it, the courts call that usurping, unlawfully usurping the legislative authority of the governing body. So if you like warehouse applications, that's not a reason to vote for or against this application. If you dislike warehouses, it's not a reason to vote for or against an application. The board's role in any site plan application is to look at its ordinances and to determine whether an applicant satisfies or doesn't satisfy the ordinance. Where an applicant does not satisfy certain provisions of an ordinance, the board has to analyze the testimony and determine whether the applicant has satisfied its burden of proof to be granted relief. Where an applicant has satisfied the ordinance requirements, the board is required to give approval. I would say the one exception to that, though, and Mr. Simon cited the Dunkin' Donuts case, even where an application is fully compliant with all ordinance requirements, if a board finds that the ingress and egress to the site is dangerous, that would support a denial of a conforming application or an application for a permitted use. Parenthetically, that was one of the significant reasons that the board denied the Monmouth Commerce application. And the courts upheld that because it was based upon the ingress and egress and not upon general traffic in the area. With regard to a few specific elements that were discussed, I want to talk about the ordinance, the environmental ordinance that Mr. Parisi cited, and he gave the correct citation to that ordinance, and he read it. It appeared to be verbatim. I don't have any disagreement with how it was recited. However, I think that you have to read the ordinance in concert with the New Jersey case law and the remainder of our site plan ordinance. There's no standards in that ordinance for a board to apply, and I think the board would be hard-pressed to find that there is something that could be considered noise pollution when an applicant is complying with the noise ordinance. In this case, the applicant is not requesting any relief from any noise ordinance requirements. It's not even, those requirements are not even in the land use ordinance. Similarly, air pollution is regulated by the federal government and the state government. You know, if an applicant complies with what those requirements are, a board can't disagree with those levels of government and their regulations and find that there's a detrimental impact. I always say it's similar to cell tower applications where, you know, boards are prohibited from finding that the radiation is dangerous by federal law. Same thing with soil in terms of there are outside agencies that regulate it, the freehold soil conservation. So I think you have to read that section and find that there's been a violation somewhere of an applicable standard, whether it be a local, county, state, or federal standard, in order to get to a place where you could deny an application based upon that. With regard to stormwater management, I mean, the board has heard a lot of testimony about stormwater management, but at the end of the day, this board has to be solely focused upon is compliance with the stormwater management regulations. The municipal regulations parrot the state regulations. So unless you find that there is a provision of those regulations that were not satisfied, you know, the board is really not in a place to deny based upon stormwater management issues. In terms of the number of revisions that were made to the plan, there was some discussion about that. really doesn't matter for this board how many revisions were made to a plan. It's what does the plan look like at the time a decision is made. And you have to apply the standard that I gave you before to whatever that final plan looks like. It's not uncommon for plans to be revised over time as a result of cross-examination, questions from the board or anything else that happens. So, number of revisions is not relevant. It's the final product that is relevant. And I would just say, at the end of the day, I think both counsel are correct in terms of the board has to, take and consider not only the expert testimony from the applicant, the expert testimony from the objector, also the board's own experts, as well as any lay testimony that you may have heard from the public, and balance that and find which testimony you find to be most persuasive. But again, it's in the context of compliance with ordinance requirements. So if the board has any questions, I'm certainly available.
Any questions? Anyone? Okay. So,
So I just want to make sure before we take any motions.
Yep.
Mr. Simon, the request is preliminary and final site plan approval with ancillary design waiver relief?
That is correct.
Okay.
okay. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
Chairman?
Mr. Leggio.
Yeah, all right. Listen, I would like to make a motion to deny application SP-1105. I've attended every hearing on this application. I've listened to the testimony from the applicant's professionals, the objector's professionals, okay? I believe the objector's professionals have presented a lot of credible testimony that raises multiple concerns for this application. Being a planning board member, the number one issue for me is protecting the roadway safety for our community. It doesn't matter how much signage is put in place, trucks are going to come and go from this site as they please. I do not believe trucks will not cross into oncoming traffic. This is an unsafe condition. Roadway safety for our community must be our primary concern. I believe that the applicant has failed to prove that ingress and egress will not result in a lethal situation.
So you are making a motion.
A motion to deny.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Mercer with a second.
And I always say this whenever there's a motion to deny. You're voting on the motion. So a vote yes on the motion is to deny.
Right.
Okay, Eileen, I'll have a roll call, please.
Mr. Leggio,
Yes.
Mr. Mercer,
Yes.
Mr. Rebel, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Ms. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Carbonic,
Yes. Excuse me, yes.
Chairman Husser.
Yes.
Motion carries, applications denied.
All right. Any master plan update, Jen?
No, not at this time, but we will be doing updated housing element stuff coming probably beginning of the year.
2025?
Correct.
Got it, okay. I won't bug you for the rest of the year then. Ron, is there any reason to go into executive session? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.